So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Monday, October the 11th, 2021, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And so while we're waiting on Michael to get dialed in, I'll just thank everybody for being here and being part of this. I invite you to go to the website, which is White, again, WHYAGAIN.org. You can click on the bullseye or start here in the upper left corner. They both take you to the same place. There's lots of information that will get you started or help you along the way if you're already familiar with the work. There's audios and videos, there's book downloads, there's just lots and lots of information. There's posters. So just go out and look around and click on things and download things and put it to work in your life, and you will see changes. I talked to somebody the other day, and she's now in a crisis mode. And she wasn't doing the work before, and now she's in crisis, and it's like, I need to know how to do this. And it's like, you didn't get there overnight. You're probably not going to clear it out overnight. And, you've things have gone so far, it doesn't say that it can't be reversed and be turned around. However, you can be at peace in the midst of the situation. I gave the example, and I use this a lot, of the disciples being in a boat. And they were out at sea, and there was this huge storm and the waves and the wind and all this, and they were afraid. And they saw Yeshua, Jesus, walking on water. And Peter said, I know if you ask me to step out that I can walk on water too. And Jesus is like, well, come on. Peter steps out of the boat, and he actually walks on water. Now, nothing has changed in his circumstance. The storm still rages, the waves still rock, the wind still blows. Nothing has changed in the circumstance. But when he has his focus on the Master and he's walking on top of the water, it's irrelevant that there's a storm. But then when he starts looking at the circumstances, he sinks, and he has to cry out for help. So are you sinking, or are you walking on water? We all have storms in our life. They're different for you, different for me, different from Michael. Everybody has storms, and they're all different. And we have to ask ourselves, are we sinking or are we walking on top of it? So the circumstance, what I told her was, your situation may not change. The symptoms and the diagnosis and all those things might stay the same, and they might not. They may totally clear up. But you can be at peace and walk above it, regardless of the storm. And so that's what I offer this morning. And so put the tools to work in your life. Don't wait till you get in a crisis to try to dig yourself out. And I'll welcome Michael to the show. Hello, Michael.
Well, thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here once again as we get to deepen the understanding of these first-century Aramaic ideas of forgiveness. I'm sitting out on the deck on this gorgeous sunny day, a few white striated clouds in the sky, mostly blue. Our weekend was made up of creating a hoop house from cattle fencing. Pretty awesome and easy setup. I'm gaining much more appreciation for farmers with every project that we do. It was quite a day yesterday, but we took our tomato trees, which are over 10 feet tall, and we laid them all down. We had them tied up on a string suspension system, them all down because we couldn't put that inside the hoop house. So we laid them all out and then put these 8-foot by 50-inch cattle panels in, made for cattle fencing, but they're just perfect and easy, easy with some work, but bent them, had them meet in the middle, so we've got about a 6-foot plus walking space inside. Now all our tomatoes are hanging free, enjoying the sunshine, and we're still, we had a big mess of fried green tomatoes last night. We had knocked a few off the vine, but I'm looking at probably, I don't know, maybe 60 or 80 absolutely gorgeous tomatoes still growing, and hopefully once we put the plastic on, when it starts to get cold here, they'll continue to grow. And we'll been feeding the worms and all kinds of neat stuff. So learning lots. And it's an aspect of life that if people pay no attention to, it doesn't really matter too much what else they do. Because if you don't have nutritional solvency, if you don't have contact, if you're not grounded in the earth, then there are going to be problems that are unresolvable. There'll be people who will say, well, I improved my nutrition, and boy, I healed all kinds of things by improving my nutrition. I offer nobody has ever healed anything by improving nutrition. However, their bodies have been vitalized enough by the good nutrition to be able to heal what needs to be healed. It's the structure that reorganizes itself. When I say body, of course, I'm talking about the energy system. If, let's say, for instance, back in the 30s, they were saying that the soil in America, they were telling Congress, is minerally deficient. Now, it really can't be minerally deficient because that's what it's made up of, but the minerals need to be released and there needs to be life in the soil. One of the things we're learning more about, and we're working on getting life back into this clay that we're sitting on and making actual soil out of it rather than it being dirt. And what we're learning is that if there's life in the soil, like if you haven't sprayed a ton of glyphosate on your farm, then you've got life in the soil, and the life is what loosens the nutrients, loosens the minerals. But if your structure, if you've been eating food that has, through chemicals, had the minerals bound to the soil and not available, then, it's kind of like having a piece of copper wire. Someone goes in and takes all the copper out. You've got a great power supply coming in your house. You've got a wonderful light bulb here. But if there's no copper left in the wires, it's not going to light up until you put copper back in the wires, until there's a conductor there, and that's what minerals do in any energy system. The energy can't move and reorganize itself, and so it tends to disintegrate. When you pay attention to your nutrition, we do an intensive, we do a total fresh and raw dietary regimen, and you get minerals and you get the vitamins and nutrients and sub-nutrients that you need, then the system can rebuild itself because it has the raw materials required to rebuild. So, an important part of forgiveness work is being nutritionally solvent, because you can say, I want to heal this issue, I want to get rid of this issue, I want to get rid of this issue. Well, no, actually what I want is my fifth of scotch and my coffee tonight. And, I'm going to have 6 of those donuts in the morning at the office because they bring them in and they're free, and they're all white flour, which is pure poison, and they're sugar, and they're hydrogenated fat. Not much healing's going to happen there. You've got to have a system that is viable with the conductors, with the nutrients that it needs. So we invite you to look at that aspect of your life, and if it's not in harmony, then you might start to look on a deeper level. Something that we haven't done, Jeannie, and we might want to take a look at. I was talking to somebody the other day. When we do an intensive, and we don't have any intensive scheduled at this moment. We're looking at doing a couple of different things, but we do have a 90-hour video program that is actually a combination of 2 intensives. So there's all the processing, all the question and answers, all the teaching on why is this happening to me again, the forgiveness process, healing through relationships, the commitment, which we're going to talk about from the book today, communication, did you hear what I think I said, codependence to interdependence, mind shifters and still point breathing. So we've got a 90-hour video package available, and with that package there is a Facebook page, private Facebook page, that you'll get login information to, that you'll be able to go in and pick up all of the information you need to, on whatever level you're ready to. I mean, the program is set up so that there's 14 weeks, 3 meals a day of fresh and raw food. And there's instructions on what kind of equipment you need. If you've got a kitchen that serves dead animals, what do you do? Where do you start? Well, thank you, Urate, young lady up in the Cincinnati area who is a raw food chef who created this awesome project that we were engaged in for the intensive. And so she's got videos and audios, instructions on what equipment you need, how to set your kitchen up, what you need to order, when you need to order it in order to do this set of meals, that, and all the recipes are there. And we haven't talked about making that available, Jeannie, as a standalone product, and we might want to do that apart from the intensive for anybody that really wants to jump into and do fresh and raw food. That might be a good idea. And it comes with the 90-hour video package, and that literally 90-hour video package is a combination of 2 full intensives. One was 14 weeks, and one actually stretched out to, I think it was 17 weeks. And so each session comes up to a total. It's actually 89 hours right now. We've got one more hour to add to the package to round it out at 90. But it's just, I mean, some of the work that was done, the information that passed between people, the processing that was done, the question and answer sessions. It's just, it's just such a treasure trove of information about this work. If you're ready to take your work to the next level and you haven't done an intensive yet, or even if you haven't done the codependence intensive, we're introducing some new tools in that particular intensive as well. So that whole package is $600. So you can let Jeannie know, drop Jeannie a note at JEANIE at WHYagain.org. Give you your phone number. I'll be back in touch with you and get you set up to participate. If you need to spread the payment, if you're interested in doing it, you need to spread the payment over a period of time. We're happy to support you in that regard. And, we don't play in the arena of interest or anything like that. So that's available. And if you're interested in the food program, maybe do the same. Drop Jeannie a note, or if you've got my phone number, you're welcome to call me. And we'll figure out just what that particular product would be apart from the intensive. So I hadn't really been thinking in those terms before, but we'll have to put some thought into that. And the importance of what you do with food is really, really major piece of the puzzle. The same as the thoughts you put in your mind. It's like nutrients. You digest them. If you focus and fool around in the world of hostility and fear, then your structure integrates that, and that means that structures in your so-called body, organs, cells, vessels, they are traumatized by trauma thoughts, and when they are traumatized, they stop functioning properly. The body literally metabolizes your thoughts. And if you don't want hostility and fear and rage and guilt and grief being part of your structure, then the work that's required is to remove those things from your structure. And that is a major project. That's really the core of this work. If you go to the opening words in the book of John, where we're told it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. Well, if you go to the Aramaic language, that's not what it says. Not even close. In Aramaic, what those words say is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. Literally, your mind energy creates the state of organization or disorganization of your physiology. If you come from a culture, either the larger culture or a family culture of rage and guilt and grief and hate and fear and condemnation and gossip and slander, if you come from that, then you're in different states of disorganization, of dis-ease. The main tool that we want to transfer and make available, quite literally, to every mind, heart, and being on the planet is the tool of forgiveness. And we want to define forgiveness as it was originally defined when it was originally taught. We live in a culture that has totally and completely reversed the meaning of the word forgive. You and I have been taught all our lives that forgiveness is, you did something terrible that caused all this pain inside of me, but it's okay. I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. Now, you'll notice if you've been taught and you've engaged in that kind of so-called forgiveness, that you could be the poster child for my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Because if you believe that's forgiveness, that's the world you live in. It happens again and again and again and again and again. Because you're a creator, and what you hold in your structure, one, if it's painful, it's because it doesn't belong there. And two, if it doesn't belong there, then life is designed to send you somebody that will force you to look at circumstances that will bring that up for you. When those things come up, you're going to do one of two things. And you're going to function according to your own individual personal code. If your personal code says, well, when somebody conflicts with me, what I do is the same thing as my power person did. This is the codependence work. I rage at them, and I scare them away. I intimidate them so they don't bother me again. Well, rage is a pretty tough disease, really hard on the immune system, really hard on the heart, hard on the whole energy system. And so if that's the personal code that you have at this point, then we invite you to be aware of what rage actually is. Rage is not a way to protect yourself. Rage is an anesthetic. It's no different than alcohol. When people rage, they rage because something painful has come up in them. And when that something painful comes up in them, their addiction is to creating an internal anesthetic that anesthetizes against their pain. Now, I can only share with you that over the years, this has been verified time after time after time in working with people directly. I mean, I don't care whether it's in the prison system, whether it's former military, there's a lot of rage there, is when somebody goes into a rage, if in that very moment you can get them to drop their rage, they will process through their their PST, and there isn't a D on the end of that. It doesn't belong. PTSD. Well, I want to eliminate the D, though, because the D really, it isn't a disorder. It's a way the structure adapts to pain and trauma. It's a way the structure helps to avoid what it can't handle. But if in the moment of that anesthetic, you can open the hidden parts of your mind, and this is what forgiveness does, in order to remove the root of the pain, and that's what forgiveness is, then the next time somebody does that behavior that you used to think was the cause of your rage, you'll look at them and you'll go, oh, what are you doing? There will be no disturbance in you because there is no disturbance in you. The reason you are disturbed at any time in your life that you're disturbed is singular. There's disturbance in you. You're not disturbed because Harry did this or Mary did that or whoever did whatever. You're not disturbed because of that. You're disturbed because there is disturbance within you. And when you recognize that and you stop pretending you can forgive somebody else for the fact that you're disturbed, and you engage in the first century Aramaic forgiveness process, here's what will happen. You will collapse the perceptual constructs of your mind that justify you believing that it's all about somebody else, and you'll get to recognize the reason there's a why is this happening to you again in your life is because it's inside of you. And when you recognize that it's inside of you, and you have the tools with which to address and remove it, then you'll no longer need the anesthetic. Now, I've seen the same thing happen with people using alcohol. Alcohol is an anesthetic. What's the famous song that goes with alcohol? Feeling no pain. If I have pain, I can take this anesthetic, literally. If you take the water out of alcohol, you've got ether. I can take this ether in and anesthetize my pain. If you give people the tools, now, alcohol addiction is a tough one for a lot of people. I mean, years and years and years they work at it. But if you give somebody the tools with which to address their pain, when their pain is gone, there's no desire left for alcohol, because people then experience, as opposed to relief from pain from alcohol, if there's no pain, people feel the toxic effects of alcohol. remember working with a woman in South Florida back, this is probably 35 years ago or so. And she started doing this work. Her husband was a big-time businessman, workaholic, alcoholic. And every night he'd come home from work late, 9, 10 o'clock. She'd have dinner ready. She was a housewife. She didn't work outside the home, took care of the kids. But she'd have dinner ready, and they'd have 2 or 3 drinks before dinner. They'd have a bottle of wine with dinner. This was a 7-day a week routine she shared with me. And then they'd have a couple of drinks after dinner, but they weren't alcoholics. She started to do this work and decided to quit drinking. Just, like, I'm going to stop. And it was about 5 years later that she came back in a session and shared with me that she'd been to a party and someone had offered her a drink. And she hadn't had a drink in about 5 years, and it was hard liquor. And she was like, yeah, I'll have one. And she said when she put the glass to her lips, the alcohol no more got past her tongue, like just starting to swallow, in her mouth and starting to swallow, she said, and it felt like razor blades in my kidneys. Now, you look at what happens when you pickle kidneys, and that's exactly what alcohol does. Kidneys, liver, everything else. Liver's often the thing that breaks down first because of the pickling process. And people literally, alcoholics, bleed to death from the inside. It's a horrendous way to go. But the cells being pickled, the cell walls are literally broken down. You know how you take a hard cucumber and you put it in pickling juice, and then you come back and it's crispy, but it's softened because it's breaking down to the cell wall. That's what happens with alcohol. So when you start to get rid of the anesthetic and you deal with the pain, when the root of the pain is forgiven, removed, then the impact of the alcohol the next time if you touch it, if you use that stuff, the next time it will show up as some sort of traumatic assault somewhere in your energy system, wherever you as an individual are sensitive. So we invite people to give up all drugs, including sugar and caffeine, and don't do it all at once. You can't do it all at once. You swing back too hard the other way. But as you gently do your work and you care for yourself and you reach into deeper and deeper spaces of caring, then you end up in a whole different posture. And that's what we're here to support you doing, is living in a different place than the place of the culture that has gone before you. Unless the culture that has gone before you is perfectly fine and wonderful and acceptable to you, then, of course, no need to do the work, no need to bother. Haven't met too many people who live in that arena. But anyway, so we're going to go back to the chapter on clarifying love and why is this happening to me again. We were coming up on the commitment, and I said on Friday that I'd like to spend a little more time talking about the commitment. So I spoke earlier about life is set up. If you hold any kind of trauma energy within you, that energy literally, it's like it's in the design of the universe. That energy pattern draws to it that which will match its frequency. And so if you hold trauma, life abhorring you being diseased and dying will send you someone that will show you what it is you're holding onto inside of you. And when it comes forward, it will come forward either as direct information, like, oh my God, look at this inside of me, or it will be projected into your brain's image of someone else, and you'll say, look what someone else is doing to me. But you'll notice that even when you're fooling yourself by saying, someone else is doing this to me, notice that shy of a punch in the nose, the hurt you're experiencing is inside of you. You know, somebody says something nasty and you go into a hurt snit. Where's the hurt? It didn't come from their words. It was triggered by their words, yes. And life is here to show you everything you are holding on to with which you are killing yourself. And virtually everyone on the planet is killing themselves with these energetic patterns. How do I know that to be true? Because unless I'm way off base with you as an individual, everybody in your bloodline, just like mine, over the age of 120 is already dead. Death is inherent in an energy system that is filled with disintegrative energy. And the whole planet's bought into it. The whole planet's doing it. I posit the thought, is that a requirement? Is it possible that death, all death, is suicide? I would offer all death is suicide. And when I recognize that, then I can begin to remove the energetic patterns that will ultimately cause my death. Now, you go back into the ancient Aramaic, and you remember the word sin is an archery term. It actually comes from the archery range. If you're out there on the range and you're firing an arrow at a target and you miss the bullseye, the scorekeeper will yell sin. All the word means is off the mark. So if we sin, if we engage in an energy, if this physiology was designed to incarnate love, and we engage in an energy of hate and fear and rage and guilt and grief, then those energies are off the mark. They are sin. In the ancient scriptures, when they said the wages of sin is death, they were talking about physiology. They weren't talking about theology and how God's going to get you for your sins. That's just a pile of hooey. The simple fact is, if you engage in an energy that is of a disintegrative nature to a cell, that energy is going to implant itself in the cell, and the cell is going to begin to die. Well, Michael, how could you prove that? Well, just take a look at what the cell biologists are telling us. Exactly what they explained in the Aramaic 2,000 years ago, they're showing in the cell biologist laboratory. They're showing that when you think a thought, that thought produces a molecule called a neuropeptide. That neuropeptide circulates around in your structure until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. The neuropeptide lands on the cell, and inside the cell, where the neuropeptide energetically inserts itself, a new energy shows up inside the cell. If a cell biologist is looking at it, they call it chemistry. It changes the chemistry of the cell. My offering is there's no such thing as chemistry. And people say, Michael, come on now, you're so far out in left field. What do you mean there's no such thing as chemistry? I studied chemistry in school and university. That's crazy. Well, let's listen to Einstein for a minute. On such things as matter, and that would include chemistry, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. There is no chemistry. I remember I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, back about 25, 28 years ago. And after I presented that idea in a workshop I did, I had a chemistry professor from one of the local universities come up to me. He said, Michael, I listened to your lecture tonight, and I realized, I teach on a university level chemistry. And the truth is, we don't have a clue what we're talking about. We're not talking about chemistry because there's no such thing. We're talking about energy. We're not talking about bodies because there's no such thing. We're talking about energy systems. Violate the integrity of an energy system, it starts to fall apart. We call it falling apart death. The wages of sin is death means bring an energy in that doesn't belong and you're going to die. How much hate and fear and rage and guilt and grief and war and suffering and pain and trauma, put down, self-degradation, how much of that has been passed on to you through your family system, through this culture? Just take a look at it. It's horrific what's being done in this culture today. You look at the approval rating of those who rage and shred other human beings mentally, emotionally. Their reputations will make up anything and just shred them. You look at how popular that's become. It's even become something teachers have recognized in schools and named after certain politicians who have made rage and destruction of others the fashionable thing to do. And kids are following suit. So if you want to recover from that, the skill you're going to have to develop is the ability to reach back into that cell where that disintegrative energy is, whether it is the disintegrative energy from your own thoughts, your own mouth, or from your generational patterns, because these energetic patterns that go into the cell are stored literally in every cell in the structure, including the sperm and the egg. And were you to give birth to a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure literally every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever engaged in, encoded in its quote-unquote chemistry. Every reality your mind has ever produced is going to be in that child, in your offspring. You remember, the sins of the father will be passed. The energetic patterns of those from the past are going to be passed on. And then it further says, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. There's codependence work. There's the power person dynamic. In our codependence intensive, when I spoke about a little while ago, we introduced the concept of a power person. And a power person is a person who at some point in your life had more power over your life than you did, was not at that given moment functioning as love, and you perceived it as survival. When that occurs, the human energy field opens wide and is like a sponge that just sucks up everything in the environment. If what's in the environment is rage and disapproval of the child that's subject to that power person, then that child just sucks in the energy of rage and the disapproval. If the disapproval coming from the power person is of the child, then the child takes on, and you listen to their language all their lives and how they speak about the disapproval of themselves, how stupid they are, how unworthy they are, how they'll never be valued enough, how they were born broken. There's a whole theology that tells everybody that you're all just sinners. You were created in the image and likeness of love. Maybe that sinner stuff is a false identity. Maybe we're not designed to live there. Maybe we're designed to forgive that and return to the truth of who we are. Literally, hold a newborn child, and you get to experience that child is made of the stuff called love. It's what we are. It's not something we do. If your personal code is not based in love, then life is going to give you every opportunity that you need in order to clean up the personal energetic patterns that run your mouth and run your life and run your behavior. You know, the alcoholic, the next morning when he or she wakes up and realizes the atrocities they've committed, says, "Oh my God, that's so terrible. I would never do that to you." Well, yeah, I did it last night, but I was under the influence, so that's okay. But I'll never do it again. And they mean it. I mean, they absolutely mean they'll never do it again. But you get to the point with alcohol where the inhibitors in the mind are removed. If that person hasn't gone in and removed, and that's the number one thing that alcohol does, is it knocks inhibitors out of the mind, the things that are inhibited that we would normally never say and normally do under the influence of alcohol. Those things are loose, and that's why people do the crazy behaviors that they can do. So life is going to show you everything that you hold on to. So Richard asks, what do I do? How do I do this? What's the best tool for really, truly getting to the space of love within relationships with children, spouses, or myself for that matter, and in healing those generational patterns? When someone triggers a healing opportunity, the first thing to do is to choose to be responsible for your mind's output. Forgive and learn to hold the condition of love in your mind in all circumstances, regardless of what your mind prompts you to do. So you got to stop. You got to be out of your mind. You got to ignore your mind, or you'll just continue the patterns from the generations. So make a commitment to do something different and stop doing what you feel like doing. because feelings are simply reflection of unconscious thoughts. When we find ourselves feeling like, well, I've committed to love, but what I really want to do right now to this person is rage at them or scream at them or hit them or run away from them or poison them or whatever. So regardless of what your mind prompts you to do, make a commitment. And then develop the brain cells and the capacity to live up to that commitment. Will it be hard? Yeah. Are you going to do it the first time? No. So we call this kind of love that we're talking about all-encompassing love. The tool, my commitment from the Healing Through Relationships workshop, was developed to assist in creating that space of love. It's a powerful key in staying on track and keeping love in your mind when you feel turmoil. It is the best reminder I've found to get me back to a loving space when upset surfaces. Speak it, at least daily, in your closest relationships, and say it aloud to yourself while looking in the mirror. My commitment. So there are several forms of the commitment on the website. You can go to whyagain.org. I'm going to share the commitment that you would use in the context of a relationship with someone else, but there's a copy of a commitment on the website, again, whyagain.org, and that is a commitment to speak to yourself in the mirror, first person. This is the second person commitment. We're inviting you to consider using this as a tool to rebuild your personal code. So that, like, for instance, I promise to, first line of the commitment, I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth. Now, people feel like they've been caught or whatever, and they feel like they need to lie to get out of it. So this is one of the steps toward supporting somebody in functioning a true human being with choice as love, to tell the truth. Now, most people, we live in a world of liars. Sadly, that's just what is. And very early we learned, for most people, that telling the truth wasn't acceptable. The example I like to use of that, imagine little Johnny goes out in the backyard one day and Mom's standing there talking to Mrs. Jones over the fence. Mr. Jones comes out and gives his wife a peck on the cheek and says, "I'm going to work." And Johnny looks at and sees exactly what Mr. Jones's energy is toward his wife, and it's pure hatred. And he speaks up and says, this child of two says, "Hey, Mr. Jones, why do you hate your wife so much?" Mom turns around and whacks him in the head. He gets a good beating and told, "Don't you ever say things like that." That's the beginning of training to lie and pretend that your lies are true. Now, if you look at the whole culture, that's kind of what's running the show. So I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth and treat you lovingly, gently, and with respect. Now, people say, "Well, Michael, why would you treat that person lovingly, gently, and with respect after what they just said and did to you?" Well, they said and did to me, brought pain up in me. I need the presence of love. Where am I going to get it other than from myself? Well, this person who did this might be conscious enough to hold the space, but do you suppose they'd have been saying and doing what you think they said and did if they were that conscious? So if I recognize who I am and come through my form as love, then I get the serving of love that my body's mind needs in order to heal. Lovingly, gently, and with respect. I would do this in my thoughts, words, and actions, whether in your presence or not. Now, there are 3 levels of energy upon which we operate: thought, word, and action. If you're into physically abusive action, well, that can be a relatively easy thing to do. It's put your hands to your side and stop. But, controlling the tongue. Go back to the scriptures and talks about who can control the tongue. It is one of the most vile objects in the world when the mind is filled with hostility and fear. What was that that our moms and dads use, our moms especially used to say, to make your words gentle because someday you may need to eat them? So can you be loving, gentle, and respectful in your words, even with the person who's just offended you? Well, why would I do that? Because if you're offended, it's because there's a reality inside of you called offended. It isn't because of what they did. Offended is the output. It's a construct of the mind. If you don't like being offended, then you've got to forgive or get rid of that construct in your mind. And go back and, just think about your power person. Watch how your power person responded when someone, quote, unquote, offended them. And then determine what you're going to do with that. Are you going to get stuck and lost in offense? Or are you going to be a person who can't be offended because there's no offense left in you? So, actions, then words. And then the more subtle level of energy, where it is most missing in our culture, to change our thoughts, to literally become responsible for the thoughts we think, which literally become the behaviors that we do. And then I'm going to do this whether I'm in your presence or not. If somebody says, well, I'm on the other side of town talking to an old friend, I can, do a little degrading of this person. They won't know it. Well, there's nothing we know of in the universe, materially, what we call materially, that can stop the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. Literally. All so-called matter is transparent to mind energy. Mind energy penetrates everything and impacts every mind that has similar thoughts on the planet. The rager contributes to the mass of rage that runs so many minds. We talk about we want to get herd immunity from this virus. Well, if you're going to talk about herd immunity, then you've got to go to the other side of the coin and recognize there's a thing called herd disease. Herd disease has been introduced into our culture on a whole new level the last few years through politics. And the herd disease happening in mind is hate and rage and degradation and destruction of anything and anybody who doesn't follow you. That's a herd disease. And I'll offer that I suspect this pandemic was at least in part brought on by the fact that this herd disease has taken over America and the world so deeply. This raging, vile, vicious mind that's running so much of the world. You look at the political movements happening around the world to capture others, to degrade others, to turn others into slaves, to the authoritarian game. It's been produced on a massive scale. What if you became one that, if you are in any way supporting that, if you do that kind of language, that kind of behavior, what if you became one who started to move in a different direction and created a critical mass on the planet of being loving, gentle, and respectful in your thoughts, your words, and your actions, whether in someone else's presence or not? It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of discipline to do this. And discipline, by the way, does not mean, in Aramaic, it does not mean properly beat up. The child has to be disciplined, the stick. The word discipline means disciple. It comes from the root disciple. It means to be properly taught. Here's the teaching. The next paragraph of the commitment: in every interaction, I will look for and acknowledge the highest and best in you as I surrender to love, our true nature. So in Aramaic, humility does not mean grovel in the earth like a worm. The Greeks have taught us, be humble, go grovel. Make sure that you get nothing and somebody else gets everything. Whose con do you suppose that is? In Aramaic, the word humility describes a mental quality where one has the ability, no matter what this person in front of you is doing, to see and to energetically cooperate with the highest and best in that person. I look at these people that are out there modeling this rage and this degradation of everybody and everything, and you just tune in, and you get to see the kind of pain they're in. I have great compassion for those people that are in so much pain that they can't control their own mouths and end up destroying themselves and the lives around them. There's so much pain there that's in need of healing. My connection to my source and nurturing my relationship with you are always more important than any issue. So, we have issues. Everybody has issues. And few people realize that their issues are simply productions of their minds. They're perceptual constructs. So we see two people, and in pretty much every case, there are two issues involved. Person number one has a perceptual construct that they project into their brain's image of person two. And so it's like they have no way to see the actuality of person two out of that state. They have this projection, and this projection is like a wall that they place between them and the person they're projecting on. Then person two has a different projection, a different perceptual construct that is like the wall that they have. So now there are two walls standing between these two people who just last week did these wonderful vows about how I'm going to love you and cherish you forever. What happened? Well, when they joined, vitality increased. They joined in that commitment to, I'll cherish you forever. Their vitality increased. When their vitality increased, all of a sudden they couldn't hold down the crap they'd been hiding from each other. So now it's in their faces. Am I willing to do something with that? So when I remember that my source is love, and it's my connection to my source that is key to me staying connected to love, and I realize that's more important than my issue, then I can start to take down that wall, at least my side of it. If I've got a partner who's willing to at least start to take down their side of the wall, then we have between us then the ability to reach through those projections and actually embrace each other, actually step into that space of love. And so, yeah, we all walk into every relationship with a whole bag of issues. That's the nature of the humanity at this point. When we own and change that game, then everything shifts and changes. And then, if you make this first part of the commitment, this last paragraph becomes really important because all hell is going to break loose. People sometimes have, they got their little hostilities and their fears, and they have their signals with which they, telegraph, don't you say another damn word, well, you just, all of that. But if you actually start to do this, then things are going to start to open, things that have been hidden. So the third paragraph is what I'm going to do when those things start to open. If anything unlike love comes up, I will hold this in my heart and listen as I learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for my own realities. Wow. Somebody who's in rage actually speaking like, I have rage coming up, rather than you enrage me. What's that? So what's that going to do for somebody? Your words dictate to your mind how it's going to construct its perception. If you say, you enrage me, then now I have this perceptual construct, this wall that I put between us of you being the cause of my rage. When I get honest with myself and I realize I've been through this rage 87 different times with 42 different people, then I start to speak to myself honestly. Oh, my reality. I have rage coming up. So I'm going to hold this in my heart, hold this in love, and listen as I learn to experience and be responsible for my own realities, my rage, my sadness, my grief, my hate, my vengeance. Wow. What a difference that's going to make in somebody's life. And then the last line of the commitment, I'm here. In this commitment, again, we're proposing that you consider it as a personal code and learn to integrate it. I'm here for and with you. I will keep communication open and keep love conscious, active, and present as we heal, celebrate life, and grow together. So that's a personal code. You can go to our website and get a copy of it. I'm sure Jeannie has already put a copy of it in the notes for today. So you can go to the notes. If you go to whyagain.org, you scroll down the page, you'll see a microphone. When you hit the microphone, you'll see links that will take you right to the archives of the show. And with those archives, Jeannie has a set of notes. And so she probably has already, knowing her, put the link in the notes so you can find it easily. And or just a request of you, we're asking for support here. If you go back through the archives and you listen to a show that doesn't have notes, there are some shows that we went through them without notes, especially in the early days of the radio show. So if you do, we would really appreciate it if you do a brief description of what you heard in that particular radio show, so that somebody can go in and do a search, keywords, and do a search and find what different topics are addressed in different shows. It's not something we started from the very beginning, didn't realize that was a possibility, and so there are some shows out there, and it'd be nice to have your support if you see any of that. And beyond that, that's our commitment, and that's the completion of our chapter on clarifying love. I hope that has served everyone, realizing that the truth of each of us is not that we can do love, but that we are. We are the substance of love. It's not a verb, it's a noun. It's a state of being. When you function out of it, everything changes. In the socialization of each individual, we build, due to the pressures of the culture and ignorance, we build a self based in something other than love. If you go back and listen to Yeshua, he said, in order for you to live, you've got to die. In essence, what he's saying there is, in order for you, love, to live, to really function through this form, that false self that's been built into your body's mind, the one that demands, it has a personal code that says, if you do this, I rage, if you do that, I steal, if you do this, and all of this is an adaptation to stress. And when you get down to, we do a workshop called Getting the Stress You Need. When you get down to what causes stress, stress is caused by setting goals. You get down to what forgiveness looks like, forgiveness happens by canceling goals. Setting goals, creating stress, causes a mind to generate a construct out of its content that gives you the best information it's got on how to solve this problem, how to achieve this goal. If the data that's being used by the mind to generate that perception is corrupt, then your behavior will be corrupt. When corrupt data is used, how do you tell when corrupt data is being used by the mind? There's some form of hostility or fear active. Whenever hostility or fear are active in the mind, there is corrupt data being used to build perception. The mind in that state is a liar. The way you collapse the liar, and this is the core of forgiveness in the first century, is you cancel the goal that's driving the perceptual mind to produce that particular construct. When that construct collapses, you get to go to the root of that construct. You get to bring it forward in the presence of love, and that's where forgiveness happens. So it's quite a different idea than the one the Greeks gave us. We're here to make that as understandable as possible. And I'm not sure why I went on so much, but we're down to 7 minutes, so we've got time for at least one question. Anybody out there with a hand up in the phone queue, Jeannie, or anything in the chat room?
No, it is all quiet. No hands up. So someone press 1. We have time for a question.
Yeah, we got 5 or 6 minutes for a question or a thought. If you're out there in listener land, or did that make sense to you? Is there anything that didn't fit for you in what I just had to say? If I were in your hometown and delivered that from your local library or prison or church or community center, whatever it was, I walked down off the stage after just saying what I've said, would you be walking over to me and saying, Michael, what about? Or, well, how does this work? Push 1. Let's talk about it. That's the purpose of this show. And I'm listening.
We had an awesome breath session on Saturday. Maybe mention what's going on there.
Oh, that's a good idea. Sure. Yeah, we did our second online Zoom Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing workshop. Actually, we did it during our intensives first and found that it worked so well that we could do it online. So we did our second one last Saturday, and we'll actually complete it on Wednesday night. If you're interested in participating in that, we've chosen to do a Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing workshop each month on the second Saturday of the month. It'll be from 10 until whatever time it completes. We had a smaller group this Saturday, so it didn't stretch out as long as it did the month before. But anyway, from 10 until 5 o'clock or 10 until completion point, we'll be working with the Still Point breathing process and processing the mind shifters. Part of the package, if you decide you want to join that process, and you can join it on any one of 3 levels. You can do just one session, wherever, drop in and do one. You can do a package of 3, or you can do a package of 12. And so we'll do Saturday, and then the Wednesday following that Saturday from 7 till 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and these are all Eastern Time Zone times I'm quoting. On Saturday from 7 until 9 p.m., we'll do a follow-up session where we'll do questions and answers and process what people experienced in their Still Point process. So if you're interested in that, you could once again drop Jeannie an email, JEANIE @whyagain.org, and let her know you're interested in the Still Point Breathing membership.
And we have a handout.
And you have a handout. Let's go for it. We got a couple minutes.
9:04, you're on the air.
Well, hi, Jeannie and Michael Dusty.
Hey there, young man. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You're loud and clear, sir.
Oh, good. I never know with this phone.
We got about 3 minutes.
I know. We don't have much time for this, but I wonder if you would elucidate on the perspective of goals. You talked about goals and some stress and whatnot, but goals, let's say you've got a goal or something that you have high resistance to, but you know that it's a necessary goal.
Right.
And I just wonder, since you were talking about goals and stress and whatnot, I wonder if you have any takes on it.
Yeah, there's actually a whole workshop we do called Getting the Stress You Need. And in that workshop, what we point out, you'll notice that in terms of behavior, we're talking about behavior with the commitment today, you'll notice that if you're a normal person, a normal human being, loving, caring human being, you kind of live that commitment naturally with everybody. If you're a generally miserable person, of course, you don't do that. But the average person, until somebody violates the goal you have for them, you want them to do something and they won't do it. Notice that it's easy to live a commitment with people while they're doing everything that you want them to do and fulfilling all the goals you have for them. Notice that it's easy to be approving of yourself when you're fulfilling all the goals you have for yourself. But notice how many times people will get into, when they violate a goal, they'll use the language that their power person used to describe them to describe themselves. They'll just, oh, yeah, I'm so stupid. Oh, I never should have been born. I mean, I can't tell you how many horrific things I've heard people say about themselves. And so there's some Harvard research, and I'm going to just run the clock out till the show quits because it's a big question, and we can pick it up tomorrow. But there's Harvard research that shows that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, they can measure 10,000 units of electrical activity, the maximum amount of data that goes into perception is 9 bits. So our behavior is driven by perception. When I tell my mind I need to accomplish this, my mind will bring forward the best information. Out of the 10,000 brain cells that are firing, it'll bring forward the best 9 bits that I have about doing that. If it's something I know nothing about, it might be mass confusion that comes forward, and my behavior is, I'm out of here. I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this. It's because of the stress created by the goal. Now, you can alleviate stress by one of two things. You can either achieve the goal, or you can cancel the goal. If you don't cancel the goal will remain active in the mind till death.
Oh, yeah.
And let's start out with that tomorrow. We're down to about 10 seconds. The show's going to cut us off. But let's start out with that idea tomorrow. And, Jeannie, I don't have a pen here, but if you could just make a note, we'll start out with that idea of moving forward in that arena. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
We'll continue tomorrow. Have a blessed one. Okay. Lots of love. Bye-bye.